In this video, we're going to talk about the idea of derived parts. Now, this is actually a very enormous discussion. There's a lot of things we can do with a derived functionality inside of Autodesk Inventor. What we're going to focus on with derived is creating derivative models from one model to another. So in an example, let's say I have a standard casting from which we create all these different machinings from, let's say 20 or 30 different machinings based on one standard casting. What I would like to do is have one casting file that is then a master file, so that when changes are made to the master, the children machining operations, the children machining files, would also then update. And I do have them as separate trackable files because each one of those machinings had to be separately trackable for purposes of part numbers, or let's say a customer needs to reorder another one. I need to have them as separate entities. So here I have the derived parts IPT, and this is going to be my master in this scenario. What I'm going to do is actually nothing in here right now. What I'm going to do is start a new part file. And here I'll use a millimeter part, just a blank template. And the first thing I'll do, instead of creating a new sketch, is actually derive in that file. So I'll go up here to my flyout with all my additional modeling tools, and I'm going to choose Derive. Here I'll find the derived parts IPT in my working files directory and choose Open. Now what that gives me is a pop-up box asking me to select through some different options. So for the original modeling file, do I want to bring in different solid bodies? Do I want to bring in surfaces, sketches, 3D sketches, different pieces of work geometry or parameters? Obviously, if that stuff doesn't exist, it doesn't show up here. If I expand parameters, you can see you can bring in model, user, reference, or external LinkedIn parameters. Let me just collapse that. I can also bring in a color override from the source component as well. I can use that color override, or I can have it be its own unique color, so you have some options there. You can also adjust a scale factor. Let's say this goes through a heating process or a cooling process, or some other sort of process where my isotropic shrinkage is adjusted somehow. So maybe I want to scale this up or scale it down by a certain factor. I can put that in here as well. Maybe it needs to be mirrored. I can do a mirroring of this operation and mirror it across one of my standard planes. Now, I kind of got excited and went through a lot of this dialogue without talking about the derived style at the very top of this dialogue. At the very top, there's 4 different options, and they really involve dealing with multi-bodies, which we will learn about in this video series. But for right now, we're just going to leave the standard first one here chosen, the single solid body, merging out seams. In fact, we can really choose any one of these because we don't have multiple solid bodies in the original file. The only thing we don't want to choose right now is this last one where it changes it into a work surface. If we do that, we can't really do much with this part afterwards. The reason why this is here is if you want to make the file very small on disk and you wanted to then share that with somebody. I'm going to leave my setting up here. I'm actually going to use the maintain each solid body as a separate solid body, and I'll just choose OK. Now what that gets me is a derived in version of that derived part. So essentially it's the exact same geometry, and I look at my model tree, I can see it shows it has a link to the derived parts IPT. It has an association to that. If I right click on this, I have the option to edit the derived part, which will take me back into that dialog box. I have the option to suppress the link with the base component. So if I were to suppress this link, it means temporarily I don't want any updates to happen. If I change something in the master, I don't want anything to change in this machining. But I want the ability to unsuppress the link to then force the update when I want to. The other option in there called break link. Well, if you break the link, it's broken forever. As soon as you save the file and exit out of here, you cannot reestablish that link. The only time you can undo this break link that you've done here is immediately after you've broken it. You can actually do an undo, and it'll reestablish the link for you. So let's take a look at this fully linked machining file to the original casting. If I jump back over to the derived parts IPT, and let's say I make a change to this. I'll do just a quick direct edit here. Maybe pull this face up a little bit. If you don't know how to do a direct edit, that's fine. Let me just cancel that. Let's do a new sketch. It's a little bit easier. We'll just project this loop. Finish the sketch. Do a quick extrusion here. We'll make this pretty obvious that there's a change. When I jump back over to part 5, I get a red lightning bolt. That tells me that this file is out of date. I need to update it. If I had the file closed and I reopened it, it would automatically re-update. But because I see the red lightning bolt, I need to go to my quick access toolbar at the top of the screen and click on the local update. And there I'll see the change take place. Now, if I were to do something here, such as adding another hole or machining off some face right over here, let's do a little bit of that. This is something that takes place just here inside of this file. It doesn't carry back to the original. So here I'll just project that top loop and finish my sketch. And I'll machine down 1 millimeter from the top of that. Make sure I go in the right direction there. This is a cut. There we go. So I basically machined it down a little bit. And if I go back over to the original, that doesn't go the other way. It only goes from this way forward. So here I have my original casting. Then over here on this file, I can do whatever machining operations to this file that I want, but it still takes the original geometry from Derived Parts and brings it over. So this has a lot of functionality to it. There's a lot of different workflows around Derived Parts inside of Autodesk Inventor. This is just one of them. So in the scenario that I have a master file and I want to create multiple machinings or variations of that and have separate trackable files, but still maintain some sort of a link to the original one.